This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Corenna and Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different Q's.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Corenna Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Joining us now in studio is Republican gubernatorial candidate Jonathan Bush. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Quirks, thank you both for having me and for doing this show in general. A little bit of voltage into our tired little economy up here in Bangor, I think is just fantastic.
Well, we appreciate the time, that's for sure.
You've said you wanted to cut $1 billion in state spending and also cut taxes. What are the first three line items or departments or programs that you are specifically going to target?
After the tax cut. So the tax cut comes first. We've got a huge rainy day fund that overflows into other capital accounts. So I don't think there's an excuse for waiting. The tax cut has to come right away. $2,000 per Maine family across the board, every income level, evenly. That's the first move. Then we can begin the audit. Because when you cut taxes, it also makes you more of a business-friendly state. And you've got businesses that are currently leaving. Kelly Ayotte saying she gets 6 to 8 refugee businesses over the line to New Hampshire every month. So by just bringing back taxes, you have a revenue side hit that could be good for us. On the cost side, obviously our biggest line item right now is healthcare, and a big line item there is fraud, partly because our healthcare system, particularly on the Medicaid side, is run a little bit like a Soviet system. Everybody goes to the state with what they need, and they fill out an elaborate form about why they're necessary, and some committee says you're necessary, and then you're attached. And you can keep milking, whether you're useful or not. Even if you're not fraud, you can be legal and useless in life. And these businesses do that. So that's the first place where we need to cut. We need to check the eligibility conditions for Medicaid. If you're young and able and should be working, you don't just get to roll over onto that and stay on it. Are you working to get off of it? And then once we're in it, delegate responsibility for spending decision to doctors, not to these state bureaucrats who keep adding to themselves every year and are clearly not having an impact on the cost.
Let me ask you this question. What do you think of universal health care?
The idea of state-run anything, especially in our little state, 1.35 million people, you think you're going to set up a health plan that runs as well as things that are 10 times the size of every single person in Maine is insane. So when people say universal health care, they mean government takes over an industry. And I think whenever somebody says the government should take over an industry, people should sit bolt upright in bed and jump up and do something about it because it's a terrible idea.
We just recently had Representative Perkins on here, and he is on the Government Oversight Committee in Augusta. And he was talking about how they approved a risk assessment of the MaineCare program integrity unit. Do you believe the current oversight structure is sufficient, or do you want an outside forensic review?
I think it's actually doorway number 3. So this is these healthcare fraud ancillary services programs get signed up with the state, and they can bill the state for helping autistic kids or giving people rides to the doctor or whatever, or not. And what's interesting to me is whether you're doing it or not, it's often wasteful. Like even if you're doing it legally, it's wasteful. So the entire premise, all these Republicans saying, I'm going to enforce it even harder. I'm going to inspect it. I'm going to root out corruption. Terrific. But the problem is that these logs are going to keep growing corrupt mushrooms until we get rid of the logs. The state needs to get out of the direct administration of healthcare. This state should delegate responsibility for these decisions to doctors, to clinics, to healthcare providers, community clinics. There are venture-backed companies in every state in the country, even one in Maine, that are dying to help, but the bureaucracy is competing with successful free market alternatives, doctors, clinics, providers making these decisions. We've got to get those people into our state and competing for business and get our bureaucrats out of the playing field, get them off of the Medicaid delivery playing field. That's the real root cause here. And talking about who's going to chase the bad guys that keep popping up like whack-a-mole forever is better than not chasing them for sure. But changing the root cause is what I want to really do when I'm governor.
Maybe instead of giving them the money to begin with.
Right. You got it. No, we have set up a system that we already saw them try it in the Soviet Union. And I was actually there right at the end when Yeltsin was hanging on for his life. And I was a healthcare company executive, and they said, we'd like advice on our ambulance service. You know, the craziest, like every ambulance has a doctor in it. I mean, don't you guys have like a referral? Why? the inefficiency that was allowed to exist because nobody was trimming the dead wood, looking at it, caring about the results. And now we've gone and set up the same idea here where nobody is looking at it and trimming, whether it's fraudulent or non-fraudulent but useless. There's nobody allowed to, on a split-second judgment basis, cut the week. In any business, sales get light coming through this door. Eventually, a rep's got to go until we get the volume back up. That's just the way it is. Could be a good guy, could be a bad guy. Those are the decisions that businesses make to stay efficient all the time. And we have made the biggest waste area in Maine a decision-free zone. That is a big deal, and that's got to change. I know this because at athenahealth, 14% of the whole 117,000 doctors, 20%, 15% of all visits to the doctor happen on one single system, one single network that I built. And I knew where every penny of every dollar was in every one of those practices. Guys who never knew each other never would, but I knew there was no fraud and I knew where their money was. I know that this can work. It works in other states. We had thousands of different medical groups that were doing different levels of responsibility for waste. And we do none of it here in Maine. And it drives me nuts. And when I'm governor, I know exactly how to set it up. I even know who the best practitioners are from other states because I've seen them. I've been mentors to them and even sometimes investors in them. So I just can't wait. I know I sound a little spastic because I just can't wait to get in there, get the bureaucrats off the playing field and get these fabulous players onto it. It's going to be better care as well as cheaper.
Well, speaking of athenahealth, can you tell listeners that may not know a little bit about your history in the health industry?
Yeah, I started a company, 97, me and a few friends. We were going to manage a clinic for healthcare. And we did, and we got a group of doctors to let us manage it. We thought we could do something where the doctor would be responsible for these other ancillary things and make more money if the cost went down and make less money if the cost went up. And employers loved this and caused us to be in a position to take extra care of people who looked like they were about to hit the hospital. But we couldn't do it. The billing and the insurance and the paperwork was just killing us. And we said, geez, is this everybody? So we ended up turning our company into the company that takes care of the crazy paperwork for doctors' offices and healthcare. And that is today athenahealth, the largest single online network of medical back offices in the country. When I left, we were collecting about $30 billion a year for 117,000 doctors, and I assume they've still been growing, all serviced out of Belfast, Maine. So the other thing that's fun about Athena is it makes me the only candidate in either party that's brought 1,000 jobs to Maine, turned them into careers, and made them recession-proof. That's got to be happening in every town. That can't just be the Belfast miracle, and you go there to get your wine and cheese because they're surviving, and every other town is Spam and Diet Coke. That's got to change. And when I picked my head up after getting done at Athena, I sort of expected that every town would have one or two. Skowhegan's got the New Balance plant, but so many towns, the thing that was keeping it alive, the biggest thing died out. And again, our own government made it impossible for new people to come into the carcass and bring it to life again. I said, God, first I tried throwing my shoe at the television about it. And finally I said, no, we need this Athena story in every town. And then we need to use that momentum to get regular businesses. The great thing about Athena is most of our customers, 90% of our customers, were small businesses. They were doctor and his wife or doctor and her husband set out their shingle and try to make a go of it. And Athena handled all this nonsense that made it hard to be a small business in medicine. Maine is a small business mecca if you look at the ratio. 137,000 businesses registered in a state of only 1.3 million people. That's more than any state in the country except Florida. But if you rank us on how hard it is to be a business in Maine, we're 46 out of 50. So how did we elect people that are so in opposition to the core cultural ethos of Maine, which is do it myself, self-sufficient, fix my own gear, rent it out, make everything a little business? Why is that? Why aren't we the best place for that kind of lifestyle, for that kind of culture? Not the 46th best. So anyway, I somehow got from Athena to small business, but you get the idea.
So speaking of small businesses, where do you stand on increasing taxes on small businesses, such as a millionaire tax and an S corporation where the pass-through goes to the owner, even though he doesn't have the cash because it's in either medical equipment or parts or whatever? Increasing income tax. Do you believe that's going to bring more businesses into the state?
There's this thing that's sort of become increasingly clear to me that Maine has normalized a level of insanity that if you said was happening 10 years ago, the bartender would cut you off. He'd be like, it's not going to ever happen that in Maine, the cops arrest you for breaking and entering into a store, but because you identify yourself as homeless, they can't take you to jail. That's now a law in Maine. It's never going to be the case that federal law enforcement and county law enforcement are not allowed by statute to cooperate. That's crazy. It's not going to be the case that in a state that is the 5th poorest state in the country, we block rich people from staying. These are crazy ideas. We've got lots of people that would love to live here who are here for 5.5 months and they get out of here before tax time. We're chasing them away. There's a Laffer Institute that studies tax loads. We're number 5 highest. And the middle of the pack where you don't lose anybody and you don't gain anybody is about 5%. We're 7.2 or something like that. So if we cut $1 billion out of the whole spectrum of tax levels, we would only be in the middle of the pack. We wouldn't suddenly be like tax-free New Hampshire. We would at least not be sort of a poke in the eye to anybody whose business starts to work, because we know today those businesses are leaving. And if those businesses get going in other states and want to move or grow and they go to pick a state, hey, we may be small and rural, but we're also expensive and annoying. That's not a real value prop to trying to get businesses to come into Maine. It ought to be, we may be small and rural, but we're fantastic to do business with. We love businesses. We love trying things. Come on in. And that's a major cultural pivot. That's a flip of the script in Augusta. Today, if you want to get ahead in Augusta, the unconscious assumptions that you have, what do you need to do? You got a virtue signal. You got to be able to say you helped some minority group or some environmental, or I did something. I broke the rules in the name of goodness. I'm a Che Guevara. That Che Guevara energy wins you promotions and visibility in Augusta today. And it is the very energy that suffocates our marketplace, that makes our American dream energy one of our exports rather than why people come here.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Corenna Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Republican gubernatorial candidate, Jonathan Bush. Well, speaking of energy, what is your plan?
Each one of these areas, healthcare, energy, education, the first step is narrow, shrink Augusta, narrow the scope of the mission. The mission of our energy commissioner is energy. More energy, more affordably, more reliably for everyone. That's the mission. It is not to also simultaneously help us neutralize China's environmental practices by inhaling and staying inhaled on some environmental cost. It's not to build a market for tax credits for people who want to trade on virtue signaling tax credits with solar panel farms. It's nothing but one thing: get us cheap, reliable electricity. So once you pull back the energy billing nonsense and all the commissioners whose job it is to back scratch different solar and renewable and sort of get them through, even if they're more expensive, wind farms 4x the cost of electricity as we're already paying, we're already 4th highest in the country. Come on. Then we start to invite people in. We say, hey, grid companies will let you generate. All you new small modular nuclear providers, come on in. Hydro-Quebec, come on down. We'll buy your hydro. We won't reclass your hydroelectric energy as non-renewable. It's water flowing over a propeller. Are you kidding me? Get those pipelines back open. We've got New York and Massachusetts violating the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. We are the victim. They ought to be in court right now, getting those pipelines. Right now we tap out. We run out of capacity in the winter, and it's, do you want electricity or heat? Because you can't have both. Beat back Augusta. Narrow the mission to the mission, not the virtue signaling dance, and then invite players into the game. Be the best place for that pipeline company to focus and invest. The best place for that SMR company to put up their prototype. The best place for somebody wanting to build something that's energy intensive to build energy generation around it. And we can do it. We all know each other. We can call each other on the phone. This is great for our state. We've got towns suffocating, desperate, and there's demand. People want to be part of Maine.
I'm curious. There seems to be a push in Augusta against AI data centers. What's your thought on that?
I don't know. It's one of those get the bartender cuts you off. So first of all, let's set the stage. Maine property taxpayers, the water's coming up around their lips, their noses. They can unless they can breathe through their eyes, they're going to suffocate with the increases in property tax. Why is there an increase in property tax? Because in the portfolio of homeowner, renter, and business, the businesses are dying out. So the only person left to pay are the homeowners. And now a guy comes in and says, I want to be nothing but property taxes. I just want to pay property taxes to generate clean electricity. And we turn our nose up at him. I don't understand it for a minute. And by the way, Can you imagine high-tech people needing to be around these data centers? And what would their income and tax profile, and what would they do to keep the schools going well and make sure there's more resources available for their neighbors? I mean, the idea that you would turn your nose up at such a thing, the good news is when you look at the polls, Mainers are ready for a switch. And that's another great example. Police can't arrest you. You're not allowed to make a data center in a data world. As the AI revolution swarms the nation, oh no, we don't want any here because they're not cute. What? I don't even know why.
I think it's environmental.
Oh, could they save the environment by preventing data centers in Maine, but not the other 49 states? Dragon Cement closed down. They had been burning tires, mattresses. Somebody had an old Volkswagen Beetle, throw it in the furnace. And they wanted to switch to natural gas, vastly cleaner. And they said, oh no, but natural gas burns carbon. They wouldn't give Dragon a right of way to get to the natural gas pipeline. So the plant closed for the environment. Now what do? We get cement from China. Fabulous. I feel so much more environmental buying cement from China and shipping it here with bunker oil. It's just virtue signaling. There's no real environmentalism underneath it all. Then throw in the wind farms. Kill our fisheries in order to make electricity at 4x the current cost. Oh, but not the free-flowing electricity belching out of Quebec made with hydro dams. Oh, not that. No, that's not environmental. But my giant fiberglass skyscrapers out in the middle of the ocean and all of that, that's environmental. What? How did they get there?
So speaking of energy costs, property tax, and healthcare, what can we do to make sure we have hospitals in some of these areas where they're closing?
The culture in Maine is like, who gets to be the one to divide our shrinking pie as the pie shrinks, whether it's kindergarten being 15% smaller than senior years or hospitals closing, doctors leaving, private practices shutting down. We've got to stop crowding out the healthcare marketplace with our Medicaid plan. Again, you got these commissars in Augusta that try to run everything themselves. They price fix. They don't get to a price where there's the ability to reinvest capital. So the buildings die. And I think, of course, the larger issue is our population is stagnated. We are not inviting kids to stay here. We're not signaling that something will be here in a couple years that isn't here now, that's coming around the bend, that might be cool, that might be success-giving for them. So it's two things. Back the people suffocating the market for healthcare delivery out of the market, and then invite the state to grow so that there's a return for keeping these places open.
Speaking of closures, I found out on Facebook that I no longer have an OBGYN doctor.
There you
could
go.
Believe it, out of Bangor.
And we're suffocating the existing providers. I won't get into it here, but there's a lot of rate gimmickry where we restructure the billing so that the doctor gets squeezed, so they have to sell out to the hospital, and the hospital's a monopoly, and then they can raise prices. But none of it's working because our communities are not growing, and we need to signal that our communities are growing. And then the other thing we need to do is get behind doctors being independent, free, powerful business people in their own right, as opposed to sort of day laborers for these bloated, expensive hospital systems.
How does Maine compete to get some of the best doctors?
If we make our rules at least as easy as everyone else's, and I'd like to go with much easier. A lot of the newest providers are digital first. You get on an app, they connect your body to something. And a lot of our disease is social determinant related, behavior related. Hey, these diabetes, if I've got my little Jiminy Cricket coaching me all day, I don't have that bad event that causes me to keel over and end up at the hospital. And Maine is just a no-fly zone for these companies because of how hard it is to get set up and licensed. What we should say is if you have any license in any state in the United States, if we find a place that stinks at licensing, maybe we can cut them out. But it should be anywhere you're licensed, you're good here. We want to try your products. And if you're a doctor here and you want to expand your business, maybe you want to do your own birth center as a doctor, maybe a surgery center as an orthopedics guy or whatever. We want you to do that. We want to back you doing that. As opposed to today, you go again to a committee, to a commission, and you need to make a case that there is a shortage in Maine, just like the Soviet Union. Oh, shortage of steel, need new plant. Shortage of, what if there isn't a shortage? What if it's just really expensive and the guy wants to own his own thing because he wants to be in a place where he feels powerful and useful? Why is that not a good enough reason for a doctor to be allowed to open something? And once we say, yeah, that is a good enough reason, then the doctors that aren't coming here will start to come. And by the way, the ones that want to build, those are the resilient, creative, those are the ones we want.
What about telehealth?
You bet. Digital first is sort of the new word they're using for telehealth. And that's the kind of thing, especially in rural Maine. From here up, there's 9 guys till you get to Presque Isle, and everybody's got to drive to the doctor. And it's 3-week waits to get a primary care appointment. And somebody might be like, I'm not sure I need this primary care stuff. And then you throw on that you got to drive 2 hours. And then you throw on that it's 3 weeks out. And guess what? They say, heck with it. If we offered virtual care, telecare, digital first care everywhere in Maine, everyone in Maine would have access to a primary care appointment within 24 hours. And I don't know why the next governor can't promise. I want to promise, listen, elect me, and within 12 months, everyone in Maine will have access to primary care within 24 hours from whatever it is today, and without having to drive 3 hours to get it, miss work, etc.
So how do you plan to approach DHHS with all of the deaths throughout the state?
On the family services side, yeah. It's stunning, but it's, again, I hope I don't sound too much like a broken podcast here, but Augusta has expanded its scope to where it can't do anything well. And on the Health and Human Services side, it's ridiculous. The inspections that they take every nursery school through, everything that gets an inspection and an investigation, they're miles behind, could never catch up. And of course, very easy to hide the ball when you've got too much going on and half the files aren't done and no one's current. And then they throw in, to protect the children, we're not going to tell you how we're doing it. So step 1, as usual, drain that swamp. Peel back the mission of HHS, especially within the Department of Family Services, to the essential things, to the things that only the state can do. These kids who are truly at risk. Make it easier for great parents who have already succeeded raising kids to jump into the foster care system without a giantly negative look down your nose process. Make it instantaneous for grandparents to become foster parents. Why on earth do we put them through hell when they're needing to be a foster parent? It means that their child's struggling. Why are we doing that? While in the meantime, the kids that are really in need of state care, we're dropping the ball. So same as each of these things, narrow the scope, crank it way back, do that narrow thing very well, and invite a free market to play in the rest of the areas. If you trim back the Karen energy on the nursery schools, you'd have more people opening them. If you made a kid to teacher ratio more like it is in Japan or other places, doesn't mean you have to do that, but allow it. Allow them a little more free reign, and families will have more childcare options. Right now, that's a problem. Someone wants to come here, but they're like, I work and I've got it all set up this way in Boston. I'd rather live in Maine, but how do I do this? But then we're blocking and defining what a nursery school is so narrowly, and we're such overweening jerks about it that it's not fun for people to start those things. Should be fun. We should be saying, terrific, amen, good for you. How can we help? As opposed to fill out this and this and this and this and wait. And we don't have anyone available because it's work from home Wednesday, but in 3 weeks we'll inspect your school or whatever. That energy is just wrong, and it's everywhere.
What's your stance on the education in the state of Maine? Obviously, we've been dropping like flies as far as our test scores.
Oh my God, like an anvil. We were number 1 in the country when John McKernan was governor. I think it was 92 or something was the last year we were number 1, but it was number 1 out of 50 states. And we sort of took for granted that that's where we were. And then COVID, we said, it's COVID making us fall, but we were falling way more than the other states. It's not like we were the only states with COVID. And today we're 42, and 76% of fourth graders can't read at grade level. Imagine what the rest of school is like when you get to actually reading to learn, right? First you learn to read, and then you actually have to read to learn, and you can't read. What's that like for those kids? Disengaged. We wonder why our workforce is so heavily weighted to mom's basement and a video game console. That's a huge failing. And the root problem is that we've allowed the definition of what school is to bloat up to include all kinds of social and emotional and occupational health. And every little thing goes from a good idea, and wouldn't that be sweet, to a mandate that every school has to deliver, and an excuse for not delivering the core mission, which is citizens who can read and do logical things, math, science, etc. So what's the solution? Same old. Beat back Augusta, narrow the scope, and then that education share, it's at risk. If you can't get 85% of your fourth graders reading, maybe we'll test you in fifth grade, so you get a year to recover. But if you can't get 85% of your kids reading, you lose that middle school funding, goes to the families. They can take it to a different town, they can charter, they can home, or they can bring it back to you and ask for some new faculty or whatever's necessary, but it's in their hands, not yours, Madam Superintendent, Mr. Superintendent. I think also, though, if you look at the admin layer, in Florida, it's, I don't remember, 35,000 kids per super. Here, it's like 142 kids per superintendent. And these are, a couple $100,000 fully loaded. And they can't do anything because they bump into the next superintendent. It's like bumper boats in the kiddie land at Disney. There's nowhere to move your boat because everybody's a super all over the place.
So talking about small businesses, starting May 1st, and I'm sure you're aware of the Family Plan Leave Act. What's your take on that?
Oh, Lord. This is another one of these, what would Maggie Thatcher say? Socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. We are starting to tumble down the other people's money hill with this. This program creates a prisoner's dilemma for every conscientious boyfriend and girlfriend in Maine. Hey, Betty's boyfriend took 8 weeks off when Betty's cat died. My mom's sick. Why aren't you taking time off? It's like, you can't take time off because yes, you can. It says right here. Can't you picture that conversation in 100 bedrooms in every town? Like, all right, Martha, I'll call in for it. But it creates an incentive for everybody to race to the toilet in a state that's already got amongst the lowest labor participation rates in the country. 10% of, let's pick on boys because maybe girls want to have a baby between 18 and 35 or whatever, but boys 18 to 35, you get 10% of them not in college and not working and not looking for work. What's doorway D? And now we're going to create a thing where people can, for any reason at all, I mean, literally the definition is almost infinite, just bang out of work and go into a pool. Again, one of these, just like Medicaid. Oh, the feds, it's more from the feds. It's not really our money. It's not really your money. Well, in the aggregate, it absolutely is. But the prisoner's dilemma is, do you want to tick off your girlfriend and do the right thing abstractly? Or do you want to maybe let abstract right and wrong drip out the door? It's a really, really big mistake. And the implementation of larger employers being told that they can't self-insure, they have to pay in and not get any benefit back. I mean, that is just a whack right in the mouth. Literally. I mean, it's to pay for somebody else's benefits. It's one of the reasons why Maine is number 46 in business climate. This state of marvelous small business people. There's 1,000 things we could have done to make a better, faster, more efficient safety net for Mainers. Then again, Augusta stepping in and saying, I'm going to be in charge of it. I want to do it. You have to use me. I'm not the regulator of the game anymore. I'm the star of the game. I'm the quarterback and the receiver. It's like, no, buddy, your job is to guard the grass and then we play. And somehow they've said, no, it's actually a game about me. And this family medical leave is a great example.
Well, I'm a small business owner of one. I have a real estate business. I have an LLC, and I'm the only employee, and I have to pay in. I'm never going to use it.
Put that on the list. The wall of shame are things that if you said in a bar in another state, you'd get cut off, and here it's completely normal. That goes to the wall of shame. That's a beautiful one.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 with Republican gubernatorial candidate Jonathan Bush. Make sure to tune in tomorrow, Sunday, April 26th at 6:30 a.m. on VOM, The Voice of Maine.
You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.